WhatsApp 287-0971 or Rev-Up office numbers are 572-0383 and 572-0215. Rev-Up St. Lucia, the alpha of radio.
Up next, meet the opposition.
Join the United Workers' Party this and every Thursday on Rev-Up St. Lucia 97.1 FM for an educational and informative program, Meet the Opposition. Participate in exciting discussions from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Be in the know every Thursday on Rev-Up St. Lucia 97.1 from 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
It's now time for Meet the Opposition, hosted by Leonard Spider Montut. Mr. Montut, welcome again.
Yes, Andre, good morning to you. Good morning to our listeners, whether listening via the radio or online. And a special good morning to my guests. I had announced that we are having a special guest this morning, and today we have in studio with us the leader of the opposition and parliamentary representative for Mico South, the Honorable Alan Chasney. And so today there'll not be much of a preamble, Andre, because I want to get as much of my guests as possible, and I want for our callers as well to, get an opportunity to interact with our guests. But let me just say from the onset that with the House rules, you have to be courteous to my guests. Secondly, I do not want anyone calling asking 20 questions. You are limited to two questions. And if my guest desires, after the first question, to answer you, you will allow him to. And we want this to be interactive. We don't want anyone just calling the show and going on as if they want to take over the show from me. I am the host, but you are welcome to make your contribution, but that's the way it will go. So let me first begin by welcoming our guest. Good morning, sir, and welcome to Meet the Opposition. And as one of your candidates corrected me recently, he said to me, I should stop saying Meet the Opposition, it's Meet the Government in Waiting. So welcome to Meet the Government in Waiting.
Great, thank you. Great to be here, Spider. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And so first, let me start with the main issue. There are other issues, of course. I know you want to promote your main event, but there are other issues, of course, we will be forced to bring up. And, Andrea and I have already ganged up and said there are certain questions we will ask you.
No softballs.
No softballs. So, as the leader of the opposition, there's a major event taking place on Sunday, organized by your party. Give us a little insight as to what exactly it is that is going to be taking place and what it is that we can expect.
Well, Sunday is going to be very exciting. We have, for the first time, all 17 candidates that we're going to have running, representing the United Workers' Party at the next election on the stage together. We have 5 candidates that have not officially been given their hat and their shirt to welcome them as part of our thing. So we have 5 new candidates and 1 for Viewfort North that has not been announced as yet, only just recently been ratified by the party. You will then also hear speeches by some of those new candidates, and then you will hear the speeches from myself and the 2 deputy political leaders. And my speech will obviously try to capture what's taking place in the country right now and some of the next step forward.
Next step forward. Okay. Of late, there's quite a lot of talk about what it is that your party will do differently as opposed to what obtains with the government, what they're doing or what they're not doing. And although for my part, I found it a little amusing, I must say, that some people don't ask what is the sitting government doing, but they're interested in what doing. But when I think about it, it's a fair question, given the fact that you are the government in waiting, and should or when there is a change of government, you are the one who's going to assume the governance of this country. People want to have an idea of what you're doing and so on. So before we talk more about Sunday, I want to ask you a question that is often asked, and that is a grave concern of mine personally. And I must tell you, the reason why that question will be first up is because when the actual sitting Prime Minister is asked that question, I must tell you, I'm very disappointed with the answers that we give. He was recently in a press conference asked, what are your plans for crime in terms of the high crime? And he resorted to you, the opposition. That's what he started. The opposition are acting as if they are never in power. He never answered the question. So if the Prime Minister can turn to the opposition when the question is asked, I'm sure you cannot blame me if I turn to the opposition to ask that question. What plans does your government have, given the high crime rate that we are experiencing in St. Lucia, especially homicides? What plans does your party have to do something about it to make a difference?
So, sadly, crime is a multifaceted issue. Ideally, you don't want the crime to take place first.
When you say it's multifaceted, can you explain?
Sure. The solution to the problem of crime is not one thing. It's not like to say you can change a tax, you can change a law, you can change anything. There's not one thing that you can do by itself that's going to resolve the problem of crime. And it's because crime, once it takes place, so once somebody is killed, what recourse do you really have? It's limited to justice. It's limited to persons being apprehended and the system prosecuting those persons and the persons having to pay a price for killing somebody. Okay? And we know exactly what those things are. So one of them would be to be able to secure the evidence. I mean, that's a basic thing, right? So your crime scene, what we call CSI, crime scene investigators, the fingerprinting, taking the evidence that and preserving it in a way in which the court can trust that the evidence has not been tampered, or worse yet, has disappeared. Okay? It is that the court has time to be able to process these things, and that people are not continuously getting off on loopholes, right? If you feel very strongly, and the public feels strongly, that this person committed the crime, but on some kind of technicality because the lawyer representing the state didn't do a good enough job. So those are the things after the point of crime, and we know exactly what those things are. The key one is the prevention of crime, right? And right now, we have gone from 5 in 10, or less than 4 in 10 murders in this country being with a gun to 8 in 10. All right? So the gun has become a major tool for persons committing crime, and specifically homicides, which is what has everybody terrified at this point. How are you going to prevent, first of all, guns from coming in? Because, I mean, I heard one of the of the persons who's known to be a gangster say, you can buy a gun like you can buy bread. The government comes in to the community and takes away my gun, and tomorrow I can get another gun. So until you can slow down that and put a halt to the guns coming in, or at least reduce the availability of guns and ammunition, very difficult to fight that. That's border control. That's what's happening at your ports. That's intelligence. That's canine dogs, right? In the absence of scanners. But it's not whether it's canine dogs or scanners. You have to have both, because people are disguising a lot of stuff in materials. For instance, the gentleman, the insurance guy that was killed in America, remember? Where somebody ran up to him in downtown New York,
yes, that's in New York,
shot him, right? That gun came from a printer, and it has one bullet in it. And those types of guns that are being fabricated cannot be detected in metal detectors. Okay? So the technology is getting way past us in terms of detection. But you need to find a system to reduce stuff coming in from your border control. The next thing is that I think that the government, the police have been moving in the right direction with regards to understanding that criminals are going to use the roads for the most part. You know, people aren't using horseback. They're not going on a donkey, and they're not walking. They're using roads. So the government needs to take control of the roads. And a lot of crimes can be foiled, prevented, if in fact you're pulling people over when they don't have the right license plates. Because a lot of times when people are going to go and commit crimes, what they're doing is changing the license plate on a car, so they can't be easily detected. And Rudy Giuliani used to have this thing called the broken glass theory. Look at all the small infractions, and you'll be amazed how addressing those small infractions helps solve some of the bigger problems, because people then become accustomed to the presence of law and order. The CCTV cameras. I mean, I heard a lady on the news last night, and she was right. What's the point of the CCTV cameras? If at no point have we heard over the last 3 years that anybody has been caught or it's been used in any way with regards to a court case. So you're telling me the CCTV cameras have not picked up all these drive-by shootings?
Yeah.
All right. So those are all preventive mechanisms they can put in. And then Herman Gill Francis rightfully spoke about profiling. You must have an intelligence on who the gang members are, how the gang members are moving, and when there's disputes to them, what you can do to try to intervene, okay, to make sure there isn't going to be this level of retaliation, because it's the public that's paying the price for that. So all of these things are important. We made the recommendation, Spider, when we wrote to the government 3 years ago. Is it 3 years ago?
I think it was 2022. So wait a minute, we're going to the dustbin now.
Sorry? The dustbin. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm going to go
Andrew, for your benefit and our listeners, the leader of the opposition is about to speak about the letter he sent to the Prime Minister making some recommendations as to how we can fight crime, which I applauded. Being in the opposition, not just idly sitting by, watching it happen and trying to make political mileage off it, but trying to play a role in collaborating with the government to solve the crime. I'm happy you brought this up, sir. You sent that letter, but a lot of us do not know the contents of that letter, because according to the Prime Minister, he threw it in the bin.
December 8th, 2022. When the letter was sent.
Yeah.
By the way, he's denying that he said that.
He denied that he said that.
Yes.
What's new?
Because I asked him.
What's new?
He said.
And he did that to you again, Andre?
He said, where is the evidence?
Where's the evidence that he said that?
That he said that, yes.
Well, like on all other occasions, the evidence is there.
He's there, yeah, And that's what I find strange, that he would go back into being caught in something like that again. Because we are in an age of technology, Andre. What you say in there right now is recorded on the internet. You understand what I'm saying? And he did that to you again, poor you, Andre.
So
I mean, you know how many times he has done that to Andre?
But where is it?
Okay, well, I'll get it for you and I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Because I'm positive that he said that.
So let us look at what the recommendations were. The first one was the adoption of the COVID Command Center structure, which will now become the Crime Command Center to offer policy and strategic guidance and expertise on crime-fighting initiatives. Identification and recruitment of citizen security experts within and outside the government service to serve as advisors to the Command Center. And the Command Center should be made up of government security, private sector security, key ministries, customs, immigration, and those others involved with security. So what's a Command Center? During COVID, what we realized is that it was something we didn't know, and it was fluid, meaning things were changing all the time. And if you had to wait for the Prime Minister to make a request of multiple organizations for a solution to a problem, it would take too long. So what we did is we had a command center which was chaired by Dominic Fede.
Mm-hmm.
And you had the Attorney General's office, you had the Ministry of Finance on board, you had the Ministry of Health, all the relevant groups. And as things were happening, and if something was not working that week and required either more financial support or legal changes or procedural changes, that unit had that power. And that unit reported to an entity called NEMAC. So NEMAC is the entity that we used for hurricanes. So before the hurricane season, we have a whole bunch of people, civil society, all the different groups in St. Lucia that would be involved in that, who would sit in a meeting. So it's all of the private sector and social, civil society groups that would sit on it. We said create a new NEMAC for this. so that whenever there's new recommendations, we then sit immediately with that group. And we used to sit at that meeting, and it was televised on TV, Andre.
I remember.
Okay? And whatever recommendations that were made, those decisions were made right there. And once the NEMAC group approved it, the Attorney General then gazetted it, and it became implemented. Everybody was on the same base. Why? Because the results that we needed were more important than the bureaucracy and people's egos.
I want to interrupt you to say, quite apart from all the various groups that you mentioned, including my ministry was a part of it at the time, I want to also say that the opposition were invited to be a part of that as well. That is important.
They were part of the economic and social plan, of which they came to one meeting and never came back again. And they were members of NEMAC. In fact, the first meeting that we presented to NEMAC, Sean Edwards was representing the government.
The opposition.
The opposition,
yeah.
Right? And you remember, he said, wow. He said he's just so impressed and proud to be a solution today, to see the work that these people did. Not my cabinet. My cabinet facilitated it. But the decisions and the ideas were coming from the ministries themselves, Andrew. Okay? So if we're going to take crime seriously in this country, there's financial resources, there's legal resources. If a law is being abused and is not effective, change it. And you're sitting right there with all the people that are being impacted by it to make that recommendation for those changes to be made right away. It then went on to say, properly appoint dedicated technical administrative staff to the command center. 3, advance the administration on the border control program.
Yeah, talk a little bit about the border control.
So, customs has 2 roles. They are law enforcement agents and they are revenue collectors. Okay, they do both. Most of the part of the world, and since 9/11, that's been separated. So the law enforcement becomes border control, and the revenue becomes part of the Ministry of Finance, which customs is already is, but it adopts a very different technology in collecting the revenue. All right, but you have border control. So the Marine Police, immigration, the quarantine from Ministry of Agriculture, okay, all those persons, entities are responsible for protecting our border. And so now all of them are working collectively together and sharing resources. So the sniffer dog is for money, it's for drugs, and it's for illegal agricultural products coming.
And ammunition as well.
Guns.
Yeah, guns, yeah.
Right? So that's what border control was. And the everything had been set up, and because of COVID, we had to temporarily halt our progress. But everything was set up to be able to move towards a new border control. Institute an equivalent entity to NEMAC. So NEMAC is there for emergency services. Review the persons who are the members of NEMAC and put one that is going to be much more consistent with fighting crime. It said a mandatory polygraphing of customs and police officers. These are people that are in our trust, okay? And we've heard claims of corruption, right? One of the ways to abate that is if they're being polygraphed on a regular basis, because at least you're now showing something, and it also gives and strengthens them, because who the hell wants to be accused of being corrupt, right? And we have to maintain a very important word that I'm going to use a lot today, the integrity of the institution. Amendment of licensing requirements for all sea vessels registered in St. Lucia, making vessels monitoring systems mandatory. So what we were doing for 2 reasons is on the fishing boats was putting a system that was tracked by GPS. So we knew where the boats were. And we were implementing this during COVID because we had people, you heard stories of people going to pick up people in Martinique and everything else. And it also helps that if a fisherman is lost at sea, much quicker to be able to track them. So it's 2 things. And if a fisherman is being again accused of smuggling drugs, and he's not, this is a way to be able to prove his innocence.
By the way, the polygraph tests, is it possible right now to have that done?
Yes.
So we have those.
We've sent people out to be trained here from St. Lucia to be able to execute the polygraph test. In the past, we've relied on people coming in, but even if you have to bring people in twice a year, it's worth it.
So we have the detectors in St. Lucia?
Yeah, we do.
We do?
Yeah. It's not that sophisticated of stuff. The more important part is not the equipment, was the people to learn how to use it, because you have to learn how to ask questions. So if there's a trick, obviously a science to everything, and that's the training that you need. So it's really the person who is the polygraph person, more so than the equipment is the problem. Fast tracking the KLED and CCT installation. So we started with 120 cameras between Rodney Bay and Castries up to the shock roundabout. Now that we proved that it could work, there was money set aside for 1,200. And in December of 2022, the government was not moving with any kind of speed. My understanding is that they've put them in now, but we've not gotten any report as to how they're being used. A rewards program for information on
In fact, if they're being used.
If they're being used. Rewards program for information on illegal weapons, and 9, implementation of a court backlog project and bench trials. All right. So,
okay, Mr. Leader of the Opposition, if you can just move a little closer to your microphone.
Sure.
Some of our listeners are saying that they're not quite picking up to what you're saying.
So, the issue then on the last one, implementation of a court backlog project and bench trials, was to go to a system of not having what you call them, to go where the judge would be able to make the decision and not a jury, is what the change that we were proposing to be able to make, to fast track the systems. And this is where the world has gone, and legislation has been passed to be able to do that. And so it was to say to him, you need to fast track the implementation of that. There are too many people in Bordelais, Andre, that we don't know. And I'm going to say to you, and I'm going to fast track a little bit here, the recent revelation of the disappearance of evidence is damning, and I think has undermined the integrity of the police force. How can any one of us trust that when we hear somebody has been arrested, do we know that that's true for the right reasons?
Yeah, but I just want to come in here. You know, Honorable Shasne, the thing is, what bothers me most, I'm saying it is egregious to have a situation like this. But if you notice, Andre, in all of the cases, policemen were implicated.
Which makes it worse.
Which makes it worse. So it sounds like cover-up from within. And so I'm bringing this up to say to you, sir, as Prime Minister of St. Lucia, to make us, the citizens, a little more comfortable, can we institute some kind of independent investigating arm so that the police does not investigate themselves? Because as you see in this case here, what can happen when the police are investigating themselves?
So you mean something like Indicom?
Right.
Like Indicom in Jamaica?
Right,
yeah.
Right, yeah.
So there's a couple of answers to that question. The first one is that we were moving away and using the forensic lab and putting the CSI unit in the forensic lab. So the crime scene investigators would not fall underneath the police. They would be reporting to the forensic lab. And the security, the holding of all that evidence would be at the forensic lab and not with the police. Big step. You'll remember when I went to Trinidad and Mr. Rowley got upset with me being there. I never challenged Mr. Rowley on any domestic issues in Trinidad. I don't go to people's countries and challenge them on domestic issues. I didn't go to St. Vincent and challenge the Prime Minister there on domestic issues. It's always on regional issues. And at the time we were talking about crime. The fact is that Trinidad is the lead country in CARICOM representing crime. So there's a cabinet at CARICOM, and each country, each prime minister has a different portfolio. So the portfolio of crime is held by Rowley. Prime Minister Motley and I deliberately went and attended the meeting in Trinidad while we were prime ministers as ministers of finance to give the commitment that we were prepared to allow $1 of our airport tax to go towards funding and strengthening our regional organization, right? And that is the RSSS and also impacts. We need to have a higher authority that's independent of our own police force that can do an audit and give us assistance when we need it. Right now, when you need RSSS, countries have to volunteer to send people. We don't have a standing defense force of CARICOM. Since 1972, on something as basic as crime. I mean, how difficult it is to convince people that criminals are no longer in St. Lucia, in Dominica, in St. Kitts, isolated. They have now become international, and our defense force, our police force, hasn't. And obviously, if we're going to be part of a regional organization, whether it's at the OACS level and ideally at the CARICOM level, that should have happened because it's more affordable and it's going to be more robust if we think of the entire area that CARICOM represents. But to say that we're going to now have an independent entity that's only on standby to oversee and audit our police force, it's something I'd like to see happen, but we financially as a country are going to have to be much better off before we can do that, because we have a crisis in healthcare, we have a crisis in infrastructure, we have a crisis in social programs, right? That would have to be addressed before I think anybody would agree to prioritizing that aspect of it. And so now we continue to rely on RSS. So let's look what happened with RSS. An RSS officer was sent to St. Lucia to investigate the sexual harassment charges. So before Polius left, that's what she did, and that's what the Prime Minister and Cabinet was upset with. That she did that she brought an independent entity in here. But once he was in and he undertook his investigation, how come we've not heard what that report is? And not only was he investigating the sexual harassment charges, but he was also investigating the police situation, where you have a wife of a police officer that was killed. You have a young man who was killed in prison. I'm going to say some things because I know more. When the young lady, I always mispronounce her name, DeLeo. Thank you very much. The shells were sent to St. Kitts, and our forensic report was done. When the shells came back to St. Lucia, they were then sent to the Bahamas, because Bahamas was creating a regional database that would be shared internationally. And Martinique matched the shells with a gun that they had in their possession. That's the breakthrough that happened. And the owner of that gun was established. But before Martinique released the gun, they wanted to get the shells to ascertain for themselves that it was a match, even though St. Kitts and the Bahamas had done electronic profiling of the evidence. That's when the shells went missing. Okay? How does a noose disappear, Andrew?
Magic.
And then I want to ask the question, which is even more concerning. The commissioner never revealed to us why the DPP dropped or felt that the cases couldn't proceed. And I'm reliably informed the reason is that 3 of the persons who had pressed charges, police officers, dropped them. And the question is, why did they drop them? And 1 hasn't. And there's still 4 more sexual charges pending. And to add insult to all of us in St. Lucia, the commissioner goes on leave the next day, which is an insult in itself. And then who does he leave in charge? The same person who those charges are, who should not even be in office. Should be working, if anything, should be on leave. Look what you did to Jan Gustav. Up to date for what? Look what you did to my security. For what? Have you heard anything? There was a complaint filed. Where's the complaint? What was the complaint about? Who did the complaint come from? For what?
Well, if I can come in here, there was a complaint on television by someone who is not a member of the police force.
Call him Richard Frederick.
In public, Richard Frederick gave a directive, not just a complaint.
And then 4 days later,
right.
my security,
yeah.
right, was transferred. Then nobody called me, say, hey, leader of the opposition, an issue has come up with your person. And when I met with them, telling me, oh, they have concerns about his health or whatever, so why not call me? I'm with the guy every day. Who's the person who's going to know the first? Is me. I wouldn't want somebody who's unhealthy to be in charge of me. And then that disappeared. And then all of a sudden, his direct supervisor files a complaint. How would you feel, Andre, if I'm your supervisor? Okay? And all of a sudden, my boss moves you. And then you find out that I have filed a complaint against you and I've never spoken to you. That makes sense to you? No. Okay? This is why I'm saying that no one now trusts what is taking place at the police force. And I'm going to say to you, I've spoken to people on the ground, and people now are as fearful of the police as they are of the bad people. So who do you turn to? And I'm going to say to you, I think if there is one fundamental thing that a government is supposed to provide to its citizens, is security. And even if you're not doing it as well as it is, the integrity of the people who are conducting that security and are supposed to be protected must be of the highest level. We must know that they're trying. We must know that we can trust them. Well, that trust has been breached, like many other things in St. Lucia, whether it's CIP, whether it is NLA, whether it is GPH, whether it's St. Jude's, whether it's HIA, whether it's Bonanza Land. Let me go down the list. Healthcare, halls of justice. Where's the trust? Not one of the questions that have been brought up have been answered. All we get is excuses. And ultimately, at the end of the day, Alan Chastney.
But in your opinion, what does this do to the rank and file of the police force? Because I know for a fact that there are genuine, hardworking, honest police officers. And when things like these happen at the top, what effect do you think it has on those who are genuine and who are putting their best foot forward in trying to do their job in crime fighting?
I've spoken to some of them. It's painful. Especially for police officers who've been there for longer periods of time and know better, right? Mm-hmm. As to see the reputation of where the Royal St. Lucia Police Force has gone to. Confidence in the hierarchy and how that hierarchy got there. Because we hear the stories and it's been backed up by evidence of people that were, fast-tracked.
Yeah.
Right? So the fact is that Ronald Phillips has been hand-selected by this cabinet, and they want him to become the commissioner of police. Now, it's for them to answer the question as to why. But it's the length they're prepared to go to clean him, to allow him to do that. Should Ronald Phillips ever be in a position to be commissioner of the police force, given what has been said about him and the allegations that have been made about him? Should. And given the current reputation of the police force, is he the right person to be there? Now, is he some super cop? Is he Shaft? Is he some super cop? Cyril? That people look and say, wow, okay, this is a great guy. What has Ronald Phillips done for us? What's his track record? Is he the brightest in his class? Gotten all kinds of training around the world and he has a full comprehension and this is like the best man for the job? But that couldn't be, because where was he 2 or 3 years ago in rank? And he's not gone off to training. So what the government is currently doing is a disgrace. It's a disjustice to all of us, and they're destroying our civil society. And it is very sad for those good police officers who are part of this institution right now and are trying to do their best under very difficult circumstances. But the reality is the public every day are growing more and more wary of the police.
And by the way, this is the first time I actually heard exactly what went missing. You said the shells.
Not the gun. Everybody keeps talking about the gun.
Yes.
It's not the gun.
I thought it was
They never had the gun.
Yeah.
It was the shells. And the shells are important because each gun has a unique barrel, which produces markings. That's what the forensics is. Now the question is, are the Martinicans going to accept what now is the electronic version? Because we have two entities, the Bahamas and St. Kitts, who did the forensics on it. That's going to be the million-dollar question. But the reality is that this government has not been forthright, truthful. I mean, when I heard the Prime Minister say, I think the media person asked him the question, does he have the details? And he said, well, he doesn't. So the Commissioner of Police called him the day before the press conference to tell him that he was going to have the press conference. He had the press conference, and then he went on leave. And he's not giving him a report. Do you believe that, Andrew? Do you believe that? I don't think anybody in St. Lucia believes that. How can a Prime Minister not ask his Commissioner of Police even to come in for one day? Or before you go, come and give me a briefing. And you don't see that it's your responsibility. You don't have to understand the mechanics of how a forensic report's done. You don't have to understand the mechanics of how a policeman does his job. You are there to be a policy person. So the police officers, like when I was there, he knows every single Monday, if I was late for cabinet, is because I was at a reporting session with the hierarchy of the police. Every single Monday. And some people say, well, how does Alan Chastney know all that level of detail? I don't know the detail of what they're doing on a daily basis. I don't ask them what they do on a daily basis, but I want to know that I can see that there's progress taking place. So we were tracking 10 criminal activities. Why 10? Because broken glass theory. You don't just attack homicides. You attack to things, robberies lead to homicides. Okay? Harassment leads to homicides. So you track all those things. If you're reducing that number, the likelihood is you're going to be reducing the number of murders. It's a science. It's adding, and not multiplication. It's adding. So it's not overly complicated. You don't have to be an expert, but as a Prime Minister, you have to be sufficiently savvy to know, are we achieving our goal?
So talking about being savvy, do you know how the system operates as far as the armory is concerned?
We do, because there have been cases that where evidence was found, planted, and that evidence came from the armory. So the armory, and so you do track it. I mean, there were on 2 occasions that we closed the armory to do an audit, and that audit now becomes part of the case, the criminal case. So if in fact nobody has signed out the evidence, Andre didn't come as a police officer or the DPP's office and wanted the evidence, so nobody signed it out, who's responsible if it goes missing? The person that's there. If somebody signs it out, okay, and doesn't return it or returns it in a damaged form, because each time it's transferred, there's photographs taken of the evidence, documentation, that it comes back the same way it went. So you know when the person signs out, that person becomes responsible for it.
So, Mr. Opposition Leader, let's just assume that your party was in government at this time when this sort of thing happened within the St. Lucia Police Force. How would your government have handled that situation?
So first of all, the Commissioner of Police would have come to me as the Prime Minister and the Minister of National Security, and there's no way that he would be allowed to go and make any public statements without determining who is at fault, even if you can't prove it. If it's suspected, those persons have to go and leave. I mean, that's the first part of the investigation. And if you're not sure whether there was collusion between the person in the armory and the person who signed it out, then both go on leave. Because the first thing you have to do is to give the confidence to the public that you've done something. Okay? This is egregious what has taken place. You have to react that way, and you have to bring in independent investigators. Because again, now you're talking about investigating, to what Spider said, the police force. Can the police force be trusted to investigate its own? You have three cases involved with the police. None of them should be investigated by the St. Lucia Police Force.
So why, after all these years, we don't seem to have what exists in Jamaica? There's this independent organization called Indicom, and they are the ones who investigate the police matters. Why is that taking so long, considering what's going on?
I explained to you. It's something that we all want to run away from. Money. That's the truth. So you're not even funding the police force to the extent it should. You're not funding the Ministry of Health to the extent it should. You're not funding the Ministry of Education. You're not funding the infrastructure to the extent that you should. And this is the point that everybody wants to run away from. So growing the economy has become a bad word in St. Lucia. But people are not understanding it is absolutely necessary in order to generate the resources to provide world-class services. The Ministry of Health, as an example, Andre, is about $120 to $150 million short every year of providing a reasonable health service. And it's already the number one expenditure item that we have. Okay? Roads. I mean, I met a constituent of mine yesterday, and you're saying, oh, I didn't get my road to my house done. I said, okay, but some of the main roads were done. The reality is, when we came in, you know this number, that when we did an assessment, that in order to fix all the roads in St. Lucia in 2016, it was $1 billion. $1 billion. We ended up spending $400 million. So we did a little bit less than half of the roads. Should I be applauded? Absolutely. But is everybody in the country going to applaud? No, because 60% or more of the people didn't get their roads fixed.
True.
And that is to fix the roads. But to maintain the roads is a minimum of $10 to $12 million a year. And the importance of maintaining the road is to reduce how many times you have to go back and fix the road again. Under the Labour Party and under Stephenson King, $1 million a year. I remember the day in Cabinet when I had imposed the gas tax for $1.50, and the Ministry of Infrastructure got $30 million. You hear me? That came from that gas tax. That's where it went, the Ministry of Infrastructure. So when they talk about the lockbox, okay, the lockbox was in the Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance knew all revenue that was coming from that goes to the Ministry of Infrastructure. And that's why you saw so many roadworks taking place.
But I want to make a point here, with my little understanding of government and how it works. What you've said there is so important. I wonder, I don't get the opportunity, but I wonder if Andre asked the current Prime Minister for figures like you're quoting there right now, whether he has a clue. Because you are actually saying it would cost us per year so much for maintenance, it would cost us per year so much to build roads and so on. Planning is important in the first place. Here's the reason why your government, which I was a part of, agreed, and you know me, I hardly want to agree on any taxes, because personally, if I can avoid paying taxes, I prefer not to, but it is a necessity. It is required in almost every country you have to pay tax. I would not have agreed to impose a 150 on gas, okay, for no justifiable reason. But there was a justification. And what satisfied me most as an individual, I'm not even talking about as a member of your cabinet. As a member of your cabinet, I was happy I got 70-something roads fixed. What I was happy about is, Andre, when I pay my taxes and I can see where my taxes are going to, and that, I think I speak for the average one, if they can see where the taxes are going to. By the way, you know where your 2.5% is going to, Andre? Anyway, I was just asking that.
So, Mr. Opposition Leader, so you're saying as far as setting up an Indicom type of arrangement, it has to do with lack of resources.
And again, and I want to say this, because, people hear comments, and the government or the SLP are very good at propaganda. I mean, you really have. I mean, Richard Frederick, as I said, should get a PhD degree in the half-truths. And he understands the human psyche. Just tell a little story, okay? Alan Chasney moved the roundabout at Rodney Bay because his father had land where he was moving it to. Okay? No details. Is it true that my father had land there? Yes. Is it true that Alan Chasney moved the roundabout? No. The Ministry of Infrastructure took it from where MJI was, that's where the original roundabout was going to go, to La Tourette Road. Why? Because they said we were going to be building and fixing the La Tourette Road to connect to the other side. And when we eventually build the north-south highway, that's going to be the connection point back into Rodney Bay. So put the roundabout there. Makes sense. My father had land there. 400 square feet, Andre, of a total amount of 24,000 square feet that was taken. My father gave them the 400 square feet. But you see, when you say it in a half-truth, it sounds much better. I went to St. Vincent and I made the comment, what if the OECS at this point withdrew from CARICOM and renegotiated as the OECS? Why? Because when we went originally into CARICOM and we went into CSCB, we went in as St. Lucia. The OECS.
Mr. Leader of the Opposition, before we move off the subject of crime, did you finish telling our listeners what was contained in your
I went through
all of the nine.
The nine things. And the fact is that they've done nothing. Right? And here we are today, and those same 9 things would apply.
Okay.
And I was only making the point with regards to what happened in St. Vincent, because we need to demand more from these regional organizations that we're involved in. I keep saying this. He keeps on hearing this all the time. I said, if I'm going to be at the OECS level, it has to improve the quality of my governance. Is it making healthcare stronger? Is it making national security stronger? Is it making education stronger? Is it making purchasing things stronger? Right? And it ought to reduce cost. Ideally, it should strengthen my institutions, my local institutions, and reduce the cost. The need for a singular entity overseeing our police forces in the OECS is there. Why are we not getting that done? But the OECS, in fairness, has done a better job than CARICOM with regards to integration. So the solution that you're talking about is there. But when you now want to go and compare the crime rate in St. Lucia to Grenada, how many murders do you have in Grenada for the year? How many? How many do you have in Antigua? How many do you have in St. Kitts? So is it as important to them as it is to us? Mm-hmm. Okay? And I got to tell you, when you go and you check out what those numbers are, you're going to be shocked. Because we're always one to go and compare the other OECS countries when we think we're doing better than them. But whenever we're not doing as well as them, everybody is hush. All of a sudden, that's not as important. And we give a whole bunch of other different excuses. The reality is today, crime in this country is palatable. It's ever present in people's minds. It's affecting how people live their lives every day. It's affecting how people's businesses operate. And it's having a severe impact that we are not talking about on our health care. Okay. So when you go to the hospital in the middle of the night, Andrew, okay? Say you have appendicitis, and you're there, and somebody's attending you, and all of a sudden 2 people are brought in who've been shot up. Who do you think they're going to go and attend? How many ICU? I remember the first time going to Victoria Hospital, which was when we had, that wasn't the first time, but when I really understood it, was when we had the explosion at Reno Gajada Singh, and you had all those persons. And you didn't have enough ICU tables for everybody. So who is going to be the person to choose who goes, Andre?
That's a terrible position to put a doctor in.
Who? And that was happening before.
Yeah.
Because the nurse, we used to huddle. So young people used to get the priority over older people. The persons lived. Now, I mean, I've met some of those persons who had a grandparent or a parent that was 80 years old, still feels that the person has some life in them, to be told, well, there's a young person that needs the ICU, so your father's going to have to die.
That's a terrible position.
How would you accept that?
Quite apart from the fact that you are saying, almost like playing God, Andre, who dies.
Mm-hmm.
That's a terrible position to put the professional in, the nurse or the doctor, to have to make that decision, I just wanted to say that, and that has been happening, like you said, for a long time. But you mentioned something about the figures in terms of homicide. For the benefit of our listeners, I just want to go through some of the figures.
Sorry, I just have a quick question.
Go ahead.
Sorry about it. So, Mr. Chasney, you're saying that in these cases, there Kimberly De Leon, Shakadan Daniel, and even Tyson.
And Tyson, and the rape cases.
Right.
All police officers.
Right. You're saying that these police officers who are allegedly involved should be sent on leave immediately while an investigation is pending? Because this hasn't happened.
Standard procedure,
Andrew. But I'm going further than you went, because we were speaking, when you and I were speaking, let's be very clear, we were speaking specifically about the missing evidence. Okay? So in the case of the missing evidence, either the person who's in the custodian of the inventory to begin with, or the person who signed it out, depending on if you think both of them colluded or not colluded, for safety, everybody goes home, pending the outcome of the investigation.
So, but what we have right now is the police commissioner going on leave.
Correct.
And nobody else.
Correct. And a police commissioner who said to you what? That I cannot work in an organization in which there's no trust. Isn't that what he said? So, and you have a prime minister. Philip has made lying a habit. Honestly. Because if he thinks that anybody's going to believe that, look at the other one that he said. When they asked him about Richard Frederick, far less from he said, well, Richard either came from heaven or from hell. If you drop from heaven or from hell. He said that Richard Frederick is the same person that when he was at United Workers' Party. So if he was good enough for United Workers' Party then, he's good enough for the Labour Party now. And how is it that the United Workers' Party can be criticizing Richard when he used to be with them? So let's get that straight. The person that Richard Frederick served the longest period of time under as a prime minister in the United Workers' Party was Stephenson King.
But by the way, where's Stephenson King?
Okay. And Stephenson King had originally agreed to fire Richard Frederick. Please tell me I'm right or wrong.
You're very right.
Okay? And Stephenson King, without discussions with any one of us, brought Richard Frederick back on the platform and to re-enter into the elections in Dennery. Now you're in the midst of elections. That's how it works. You give your political leader that level of discretion. That's how it works. For better or for worse. That's how it works.
So let me ask you,
let me just give a second. Okay? After the elections, when we sat around the table and Stephenson King, as now the leader of the opposition and the political leader of the United Workers' Party, wanted to keep Richard Frederick in the fold. Me, among other people, said, hell no. Until Richard Frederick can explain why he lost his visa. And don't come and tell me about there was a plot against you by the staff at the embassy, etc. Nonsense. And that you were going to sue the U.S. government. Okay? Joker. So we said, until we can have a reasonable explanation, you can't be in. And it was the fact that Steve refused to fire Richard is one of the fundamental reasons why Steve was removed as the political leader of the United Workers' Party. That's one of the reasons I won. And then now he was replaced as the leader of the opposition, okay, when he was in getting more information from the Labour Party and going to their meetings than he was attending to the party business.
In other words, he was in collusion with them.
Already at that time. Okay?
Yeah.
And when I took over, we refused to take Richard Frederick, and Richard Frederick gave us an opportunity to expel him from the party, which we did. The persons that alerted the public of St. Lucia to the WikiLeaks story was whom? The Labour Party.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Labour Party. The person who broke the story about Richard Frederick was Janine Compton. The same Janine Compton who would now find herself in collusion with the Labour Party with the same Richard Frederick. Because they can argue all they want. Okay? They're like this. Pee-pee cluck cluck. Independent labor, whatever you want to call it. Okay? The Labour Party just knows that because of the damage they did to Richard Frederick, they as a party will not take him into their party. But it's okay to have him in as a minister of government overseeing the affairs of the people of St. Lucia. That makes sense to anybody in this country? That makes sense to anybody in this country? You talk about having your cake and wanting to eat it, and then come and say, he's not the person that made Richard Frederick into a politician, and other people have accepted him. I want to put Philip here on straight right now. United Workers' Party fired Richard Frederick, and it has no regrets in firing Richard Frederick. And we all know the reason why we fired him. And the Labour Party, and sadly the people of this country, are finding out more and more every single day why Richard Frederick should not be in the politics of this country. He can't handle it. He abuses his authority every day and is a major contributor to what is going on. Whether he feels he's doing it directly or indirectly, his impact on his shows and the things that he's doing is empowering people that are undermining this country, the security of this country.
So since protocol hasn't been followed as far as the situation with the missing pieces of evidence, as a party, what do you plan to do about that as an opposition party?
Continue to highlight the problem.
So aren't you going to write the Prime Minister, write the police commissioner on this matter?
I'm going to go a step further, so that the announcement will be made later today as to what I'm going to do. But we're not going to let this just fall by the wayside. We're not accepting the explanations that the government has given us. In fact, the explanations that the government is giving us is more damning and raises absolutely more questions than there are answers. And we've entered into a very serious situation in this country where, I tell you, the integrity of the police force has been brought into question. And when people are going to fear the police as much as they're going to fear the criminals, it's very sad. Can we trust anything? You know, if I have a case right now with the government, a criminal case with the government, I will be smiling.
You haven't spoken about Tyson as yet.
Look, Tyson's is self-explanatory. How can a canine dog that was in the custody of the police, and up to now, you're still telling us you were the ones who said it under suspicious circumstances, and the person who was handling the dog is still there? Really? So even if the person who was handling the dog was not directly involved, he was indirectly involved, because Tyson was his responsibility. Right? Now, there are even more damning things. So pre-Tyson, we had a K9 unit that had separate handlers outside of the police force, $40,000 a month, right? And the government said, send him off. First mistake. And we now must question why that decision was made. And we have every right to ask that question. Why is the handler of Tyson not gone? And here's the third question. Has the government of St. Lucia written to the French to get a replacement to Tyson? And what has been the result of that? So I'll give them an opportunity to answer that question before I say what the answer to that question is. But I think that when I give the answer to that question, people in this country are going to be even more shocked. And it brings into question as to what is going on and why. Why is it that we don't want scanners? Why is it we don't want canine dogs? Why is it that we're going to accept that police officers can investigate themselves and we're going to accept that the evidence has gone? Why are we accepting that every year we're seeing an increase in the number of homicides? There are allegations that are being made, Andre, that the government is giving contracts to drug lords. Has the government sufficiently answered that question? Is it true? Now, let us understand the implications of that. In Jamaica, we've seen a 45% decrease in crime. And one of the things that he did in Jamaica, and Andrew Holness came out and said it, right? He's going to make sure that no contracts are being given to anybody linked to the underworld. Because he said that's one of the things that's facilitating, because that's money that's going in to fight the people. And that in itself was causing a problem, which we've seen here, because you have gang lords who are upset that they're not getting.
So this allegation, again, have you asked the question?
Of course.
Have you asked for clarification?
We asked who was the contractor for the custody suites. I'm going to drop something for you today. The NLA borrowed $80 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've all talked about it. We've all talked about the financial implications, $800,000 a month.
That's the repayment, yeah.
The repayment, right?
To the loan, yeah.
Okay. Do you know that the NLA also borrowed money for the Olympic pool? A pool that was originally supposed to cost $12 million went to $20 million, and today $30 million. And who was the contractor? How did the contractor get the contract? Who would we've asked this question multiple times. Can the government tell us the $80 million, what's the breakdown? How much has gone to where? And who were the contractors? How many times we've asked that question? And there are people, the opposition is just being mischievous and this and that. What? Really? Your money? And it's on record when we first borrowed the money, I said the NLA should not be allowed to borrow this money, a government guaranteed loan, without the condition that they had to adopt the same procurement guidelines as the state. Do you know what that means, Andre? When I say that? That they have to adopt the same procurement guidelines? So the government is guided by law to put things out to tender. The only time it does not have to go out to tender, and everybody, again, misunderstands what's a direct award, and maybe it's the wrong word, because a direct award seems like, it's the Prime Minister or the Minister of Finance who's hand-selecting somebody to be the contractor. That's not the case of what a direct award is. A direct award is when a ministry comes to you and says whether it's a matter of urgency, a special skill, there's some exception to the rule, and therefore we don't want to go through a bidding process, and we want to select. It's they that make the selection, not the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance only oversees what the request is, verifies with the Director of Finance that it's okay, and all the checks and balances have been done, and by law gives the exemption. That's what a direct award is. But you see, they smartly put the money into the NLA. Why? Because the management of the money is by the NLA board. And the NLA board was for there to do what? To regulate the lottery. That's what the job of the NLA is. And that is why what we were doing is that we were making a separation, and we were going to create now what's called a gaming authority. So it wouldn't be just regulating the lottery, it'd be regulating the horse racing track and gambling. Because there would be more for it to do. And then now creating a sports authority, a youth and sports authority, where the money would go in, and you would now have a structure to implement those kinds of projects. And there's accountability. This government does everything it can, Andre, to run away from any level of accountability. So whether it's GPH, whether it is the halls of justice, there's no justification for giving the halls of justice to somebody when NIC has been the perfect vehicle to do those things in the past. NIPRO and NIC. Why would you do that? And NIC needs the investment because it needs to get a return on the pension funds. Why would you do that? And then pay 10% interest? CIP, why would you give Galaxy $600 million of passports and they're only going to give you $100 million?
Now, Mr. Leader of the Opposition, I mean, my listeners complain quite a lot and say that I don't allow my guests to speak because they are more interested in you, trust me, than they are in what I have to say. However, I want to bring to a close that subject on crime before I move to these other areas. And, Andre, by the way, before we move on, I had someone send you a clip of the question that was asked of the Prime Minister at the last press conference. So while you look for it and queue it up, I just want to say this. You made a little mention about figures there. And you're talking about figures on homicide. And like you quite rightly said, crime is multifaceted and there are many different crimes, and you talk about all of them have to be tackled if we want to do something about what I consider to be the ultimate, that's homicide. Correct. Because that's irreversible. You can steal my phone, I always say, so I can buy another one. When you take my life, that is it. That's irreversible. But let's talk about homicides, what the Prime Minister refers to as homicides. And he has refused to give the public concrete answers and plans as to what he's doing about the figures that have been rising to have caused us the concern, and to have St. Lucia, I am told, has been ranked as the third in the world per 100,000 in terms of the number of homicides. Okay? We come only after South Africa and Jamaica. Right? In 2015, now I don't want to just talk about this government in the last 4 years, and he will quickly tell you as if St. Lucia started in 2021. No, it did not. Okay, St. Lucia became a sovereign state in 79. But let's look as far back as 2015. In 2015, there were 28 murders. 2016, 30 murders. Now, under your watch, in 2017, there were 60 murders. Big outcry, outrage in St. Lucia.
And rightfully so.
And rightfully so. I'm happy you accept that.
And of the 60 murders, though, that's the point, is that more than half of them were domestic.
Domestic, yes.
And I want to make that distinction to your...
Yes,
to your,
as opposed to crime, rampant gang violence and drug-related.
So domestic crime means brothers and sisters, brothers...
Husband and wives. Girlfriend,
okay?
boyfriend, yes.
So they were primarily stabbings, etc.
Right.
They were not shooting. That's what I'm saying to you.
Yeah.
Number of homicides today that are gun-related has gone from less than 4 out of 10 to 8 out of 10.
I'm impressed that, you are actually looking at, should I call it, the anatomy of the crime.
And you have to,
in the sense that what type, and because when you have to formulate policy, correct, you need to have that kind of information. So that gives me some comfort, I must say. But 2018, you did what you should have done, bring down the numbers, because nobody asked you, sir, as Prime Minister, or Philip J. as Prime Minister. We don't expect you to eliminate crime totally. It's not impossible. For example, you can control what happens at my home. Okay? So when you talk about domestic violence and so on, that's difficult to control. We can deal with it to discourage it. However, we're not saying, but we expected, look, after 2017, you had 60 murders. We were looking to see what would happen in the next year. It went down to 40.
And let's just say this, because I want to take your point, because it's important to make that distinction.
Yeah.
So if we know that they are domestic crimes, a foot patrol is not going to solve that problem.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay? This is more social workers.
Right.
This is it go around to the neighborhood, that when you see people that you can see the tension building, right? To alert persons, so we can try to prevent it from happening in the
education, social programs.
Correct.
Yes.
But you're not going to send foot soldiers. You're not going to increase the amount of sky. You're not going to treat it as if it was a gang-related event.
That's right. So, okay. People say with development, as time goes by, you find those things happening, crime increases and social ills increase. So 2019 we had 45, 2020 we had 55. Now, during COVID, I don't want to hazard a guess as to what were the reasons, but I can probably imagine the stress of COVID and all of that too may have had some impact. In 2021, the number went up to 74. Okay?
But you have
that should have been 75. But 2021, in all fairness to you, you were in office until July.
And if you look at the numbers,
And you look at the numbers between August and December, you had 49.
correct.
Okay? My math's not the best, so you do the maths and tell me.
Well, let's say it was 50. And so if you had 74, it was 24
Right.
in the first half of the year.
That's right.
And double the amount in the second half of the year.
That's right.
And where did that come from? The laxing of all the rules.
The rules,
All the people that were their charges were dropped.
Well, I mean, from a cursory look, the first thing was that the government didn't think that among portfolios that they should establish was national security.
Yeah, it was
because
it was an afterthought.
an afterthought.
Right? Nobody. And when let's make it clear.
Yeah.
When the government had its first house sitting, right, and people were introduced with their portfolios, there was no minister of
National security.
national security.
That's how important national security
Right.
is
And it
in
was-
the eyes of that
And it's only
government.
when it was pointed out to the government
Right.
that eventually the prime minister said that
He
he's
is,
taking. Right.
Yeah. And so, apart from that, you must also remember too, and that's a signal that you're sending out to criminals, records were expunged for people who violated the law. Now, in 2022, 76, that should have been 75. No, well, 76, yeah, but I think it should have been 75. Well, we're not sure because, they suppress the figures all the time. Not even the Prime Minister himself can tell you what the figures are. In 2022, I have a 76, 2023, 75, and in 2025,
2024.
24, we had a
77.
record, been broken again, it's been set, 77. And so far, I have to say that again, according to the official records, they are saying it's 49. Okay?
No. According to the official records,
Yeah.
they're saying it's 44.
44.
But the gentleman who came on,
Right.
who has been keeping track of it, an ex-police officer,
Right.
said it's 49.
49, right. So I don't know why they're suppressing the figures. It doesn't
And
help us
remember,
to do that.
the question is, the gentleman who just died yesterday, who got shot
Right, sometime
in
ago.
Marshall, not that long ago,
That's not-
2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it was a very touching story to hear that before he died,
Got
that
married.
he
and
got
so-
married.
Yeah.
And because he wasn't supposed to be there.
Right.
He was an innocent. Here's a person who's a father. Was it 3 or 4 children?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the other guy who died
Different
was
story.
more significant. I'm sorry to tell you that. I don't care how you take it. My Prime Minister felt it necessary to make a statement
Correct.
on that occasion.
To go there.
Because his life apparently means more and is worth more than the other lives. And it doesn't matter if 4 people die in one weekend. That's not sufficient to warrant a statement. Whereas I heard that same Prime Minister, when leader of the opposition, blasting you because there were 4 murders in 2 weeks.
Yes.
His words.
Yeah.
Now, 4 murders in 2 weeks. Nobody will talk about that now.
What,
Okay.
7 murders in a weekend?
In a weekend. Okay? And, he can't speak about that. So, these are the things that we have to bring to the fore. However, I am happy that you have answered the questions that were asked of you on crime. But before we move on for crime, I have a caller, and I know he's going to call today, Andre. He's a usual caller. One of his standard questions: what is the difference? He asked your guys that, your candidates, what's the difference between Alan Chasney and Philip J. Pierre? Now, I asked you the question about crime, and you gave us an answer. Andre, whether he's happy with the answer or not, we got an answer as to what the opposition intends to do. Andre, I don't have access to the Prime Minister, and he will not answer my question either. Obviously, he'll tell me it's not my business. But a member of your fraternity of the media asked him a question. Do you have that clip queued?
I have the video, but there's no audio.
There's no audio.
No.
Oh, my. It's a pity, because I wanted to have the Prime Minister answer that same question about what is it his government is doing about crime. But since we do not have the audio, I can paraphrase and say, well, the opposition behaves as if St. Lucia's, something to that effect. I kid you not. And then he went about the opposition. I'm happy, sir, that you didn't tell me the government. I know what the situation is with the government. I wanted to know what your party is going to do under your watch. So, ladies and gentlemen, but I can promise you that I will get you that clip at some point so that you can hear the difference in the answers that we get, and you will determine what is the difference between the current leader of the United Workers' Party and the leader of the St. Lucia Labour Party, and that will tell you the difference between the two parties, and that will explain to you why I stand where I stand. So, someone said to me, I need to stop playing with my phone. Listeners and viewers, the reason why I do is because I am monitoring what you are saying to guide the program, and because, and some of what I've asked the leader of the opposition, I came from you. So it is not because I'm distracted or not paying attention, I can assure you. Now, you're here to talk about Sunday. Now, why Sunday is important is because St. Lucians are looking for an alternative. Mm-hmm. We are not happy with what obtains now. We are looking for an alternative. You have said you're going to give us a team of 17, which includes you as leader, that you think they are men and women of competence with the caliber of people who will make a difference. Because now, not just a difference, so the difference we're looking for is improvement. Because you can have a difference to make it worse, as we did in 2021. So, another area, we spoke at length on crime. It's not exhaustible. We can go on for another hour, but we will have limited time. The other area that is of concern to many St. Lucians, to me personally, is health.
Yep.
Now, before I allow you to answer, I want to say to you that the St. Lucia, forget what your party says, forget what Andre says, the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association, the people who are directly involved in running our health system, said that this is the worst that they have seen our healthcare system in history. What will you do that will make our health system better, so that I don't have to go and sell bakes and chicken if I fall sick, or maybe through my own fault? I don't have health insurance, I don't have a savings aside, and so on. And when I say so, I speak for many St. Lucians. I'm not trying to lead you into the answer, but generally speaking, what is your government going to do?
So we really have to get back on track with what we were doing before. First of all, how we manage health. And what you had seen over the years taking place in the Ministry of Health was there was only enough money being allocated to pay for salaries, utilities, and some capital costs. But the operations, the replacement of medicine, etc., wasn't happening. So we were constantly short. So there was some money, but it was never enough money to cover all the needs of the people of the country. How you operate a hospital also has changed. So the most successful model in the world right now is what India is doing. Because in many ways it was driven by the environment that they were in. Billions of people, lots of people, low income. And so they had to find a system in which they could provide quality healthcare at a very affordable price. And it forced them to really think of how a hospital is managed, and in particular, how materials are sourced. So let's look at Martinique. Martinique runs a hospital. The difference in Martinique is every time they're short of money, they call France and they bring money down. I mean, when you hear the budget that the hospital in Martinique and Guadeloupe cost, right? I think it's bigger than the budget of St. Lucia on an annual basis, just for those two hospitals. So we went around searching, and we found that the Indians were the best. And then we also found out that there was a company, an Indian company, based in Cayman. I flew to Cayman. When I went there, and I met with the hospital owners of the hospital, and then I met with the cabinet of government in Cayman, and I'm very grateful to them to open themselves up, and they were very frank with me. Now, the same problems that we had when we brought Cayman Health City here, same problems that they had, Andre. Okay, the doctors were up in arms, the local doctors. This is going to take away business from them. There was a huge outcry. The government bit the bullet and did it. And guess what? It didn't. It actually strengthened everything. because they were now bringing healthcare in Cayman to a completely different level than was there before. The ministers of government said to me, the other thing that's happened, the contribution of that healthcare system now to investment in their country has been skyrocketing. A person who's coming to buy a home in Cayman and went and visited the hospital and went, wow, okay, I can come and retire here. Because if something happens to me, they can take care of me. All right? And so Americans were also coming because it was taking too long to get some stuff done in their system, and they don't have a national health care insurance program like other countries do. So Americans were coming to Cayman to get operations done because it was cheaper, it was faster, and the quality was just as good. All right? We brought the Cayman Health City group people in to get involved in OKEU because we'd not opened up OKEU at the time. The local doctors outcry that this was going to displace them. We then talked about creating the fifth wing at OKEU for an international hospital to operate. But you can imagine Tapio felt very threatened by that prognosis. So this is when the decision was made that when we were rebuilding St. Jude's, we would build it in two parts. So we have our local hospital downstairs, the old St. Jude's, meaning the old operations of St. Jude's, and an international hospital upstairs. But meanwhile, what we decided to do was to hire Cayman Health City to come in and create the same operating system. Do you understand what I mean by an operating system?
You mean the modus operandi?
The modus operandi. The modus operandi. Okay? How your nurses are trained, how they're operating, how you deal with the patient, what are all the protocols you put in place. Those are the things, right? And when I went around and I went to the old Victoria Hospital, everybody was trying, but it was a bad system. Even St. Jude's was operating better than Victoria, because St. Jude's had been beneficiary of Mercy Hospital coming in the year 2000 to put in an operating system. That's 2000. We're in 2016 when I first came in. All right. So by 2019, we were saying this is an obsolete system. So the first goal was to bring in the guys to help us now establish a new operating procedure, train all the people. And thank God we went there, because when COVID came, we couldn't get anybody from Martinique. Now, even getting people from India, Andre, became difficult, because how were they going to fly into St. Lucia? The only flights that were coming into St. Lucia during COVID was from the States. So they couldn't get to England, and if they got to England, they couldn't fly anywhere. Right? So it took us a hell of a time to figure out how to bring people in during COVID to help us in the transitionary period, because we didn't have enough staff. When we created the Millennium Heights and we put in a new board and we put in Siobhan. Siobhan was a change manager. She used to work at Digicel and understood procedures and protocols and SOPs, right, to help transition everything. Lisa Charles, who is a graduate from University of Harvard, right? Even though she was married to Ernest, and she was the ex-wife of Ernest, I didn't allow that to get interfered. I mean, did I come under pressure? I'm not going to hear it to tell you I didn't come under pressure, but I will not succumb to that. If a person has the capacity to do the job, Andre, okay, regardless of what their political associations or what we think their political associations are, it doesn't come into play. The only time it comes into play is if that person has a political preference and is now going to use the position, okay, like Stephenson King, okay, to undermine the government in order to be able to make their government come into office. That I will not tolerate, and nor would anybody else tolerate that. So healthcare requires a rehaul of how we manage and we implement healthcare in this country. And then you have to parallel deal with the money. And that's why healthcare insurance is so important. Healthcare insurance, I'm going to use this word, Andre, is the beneficiary of the collective. No one person can afford to pay healthcare by themselves. But if the government goes out and says, I'm going to insure 100,000 people, the rate that the government is going to get for that insurance is going to be different. Does that not make sense?
Yeah.
Okay? And then they have to be things that you're going to do, that discussions that we already started. And I want us to appreciate the pushback. So to make this system work, we have to have fixed prices. You know what that means, Andre?
Prices don't change?
For the services. Checkup, a cast, getting blood work done. You know, all these things have to have a fixed price. Because if you don't have a fixed price, it means that the insurance money you have, the pool of insurance money, will run out. Or you have to increase the insurance rate. So to give integrity for at least for a period of time, to create the stability you need to now put in those things. And it means the Ministry of Health now, which by de facto has become the manager of the hospitals, because there's never enough money. So the permanent secretary is constantly being pulled in to the operations of a hospital in St. Lucia because they never have enough money. So we need to not have that, and that the Ministry of Health becomes the regulator. The regulator in the sense of what? That people are properly licensed, prescriptions and what is being taking place with the patients is being analyzed. You're constantly taking files out and double checking them to make sure everything is good. When people feel that they've not been treated properly or there was malpractice, there's an independent entity you can go to that deals with that. Because right now you cannot, because the Ministry of Health would, if they admit to any malpractice, are condemning themselves because they're so involved. So there has to be this rehaul of healthcare and understand statistically what our problem is. Mm-hmm. It is diabetes and tension. Yeah. Once people get past a certain point, and then when people become amputated or people get a stroke, it now becomes catastrophic in our system. Mm-hmm. So we have to do a better job. And these are lifetime, lifestyle ailments. Yeah. Now, should we be practicing health, get people out, jog in the morning and eat better? Yes. But with the greatest will, Andre, it doesn't happen overnight. So prescriptions becomes the easier way. Taking your blood pressure pills, taking your medication for diabetes, all these things will do a better job in the short run of reducing these ailments.
Yeah. So when you spoke about the model, the healthcare system model in India, what exactly did you mean?
So it is the business practices that they've put in place, the structures they've put in place as to how a hospital is structured. So the hierarchy of the hospital, and then all of the training manuals that goes in place to deal with those persons. Let me take something a bit less. Let's take Norway. Norway has the best education system in the world. There's a test that's done every year on creative thinking. So that's what the test is on. PRISM or PRISIS, it's called. When you go and you examine the Norway system, there's 3 teachers per classroom. So you have a teacher that's dealing with kids who are advanced, meaning kids who learn very fast, your standard kids, and kids with special needs. As a result of it, nobody has homework. There's very little need for a parent and teachers association because the Norwegian government values their education system and the contribution that those persons are going to make in earning money for the country. Right? Could I replicate that system in St. Lucia? Could we afford to pay for 3 teachers in every classroom in this country? The answer is
no.
No. So I can't adopt the Norway system, but what I can adopt is the outcome of the Norway system. And I say, how can I now create a process within my own country and my education system that is going to yield the same results? Because that's the result I have to yield. And that's what I'm saying to you in the case of India, because of the population and the wealth of the population, very low income, they have had to perfect those efficiencies. So they have, this company owns 55 hospitals and are doing purchasing of medicine, etc., as a collective, and it reduces the cost. They found procedures to maintain efficiency or improve efficiency, but not just throwing people at it. And so that system, when it came to Cayman, we saw it. It's working in the Caribbean, because that's the next thing that people, that's in India. Okay, well, they brought the system, they took it to Cayman, and it's working incredibly well. We saw that when St. Jude's, you go to St. Jude's, Andre, even today in the stadium, it is better run than OKU. Okay? When you go to St. Jude's, they make sure you fill out your forms for insurance so that the hospital can collect the money. Why? Because the St. Jude's only gets a subvention from government. It must make its own money. And if you can't pay, you can give them food. You can give them work. They find ways, but nobody goes in there without being able to pay. Okay, EU. Because it was the same system. When we were transferring them over, we had all the procedures going in with the Indians. The government came in and said, oh, we were spending too much money, $12 million. Right?
Okay,
too much money to bring these people in.
You mentioned the health insurance, which honestly, it relights, turns on a light for me, rings a bell for me, is exciting for me.
Mm-hmm.
That is a form of, we talked about one form of security a while ago, which I value, my life, in terms of safety. But that's another form of security, as far as I'm concerned. The confidence and satisfaction and comfort that I have that if something goes wrong, if something happens to me or my family, that we can meet the cost of healthcare, because there are people dying in St. Lucia today, not because healthcare, the cure is not available, but because they cannot afford it. It's inaccessible to them. I want you to say to me, how will that health insurance work? Because I am saying that I don't have money to pay for healthcare, but how do I have money to pay for the insurance? Will it be affordable to me?
So we know that the state is around $120 to $140 million short every year to run the hospitals properly. Okay, so if you have 90,000 people as a working force in St. Lucia, and each one of them is paying $1,000 or $1,100, that's where the amount comes from. Okay, now when you're working for a business, Andre, I work for a company, we would make this part of our policy. If you're making a salary below a certain level, the company has to pay the entire amount for you, the $1,000, which is per year. If you're working at higher salary, then the government will split it, just like NIC, half. In the case of government, same thing. Employees below a certain grade level, government will pay the entire amount. For everybody else, we'll have different levels of splitting it. People in the private sector, okay, would have to make their contributions as well. Government has said those persons who are pensioners, making a pension below a certain amount, government will pay the $1,000 for them. Persons who are below the poverty line,
Right.
okay, government will pay the $1,000 for them. Right? Now, how does insurance work? Not everybody is going to get sick at the same time. But included in it, and this is very, very, very important for all of us to appreciate, that in order to have the healthcare insurance, you need to get a health checkup, whether it's once a year or once every 2 years. Why is that important? It means statistically, accurately, we know the state of the health of our country. We know how many pre-diabetic people we have. We know how many hypertension. We know how many people who are potentially with cancer. Because right now, Andre, the reality is some people don't even don't want to know if they're sick or not.
Yeah.
Because to know I'm sick and to then know I can't do anything about it. Okay? They just say, Mr. Shas, I leave that one to the Lord. Okay, I'm not going to get involved in that. Right? That has to change.
Yeah, no, I just want to
and that helps now define and refine government's policies. And so if I'm doing a program to help reduce diabetics, whether it's to get people to on medication or to change their lifestyle, and I can see the success of my programs, because in the next 2 years, I'm getting now a full review of where everybody is, and I'm fine. That's the Taiwanese system. So they were also helping us. We were going to all the countries that had the best practices around the world, adapting them and putting them in the context of St. Lucia.
Andre, I must say, what I'm really impressed about this is that, the leader of the opposition explained what they're going to be doing. What he didn't say, that's very important, is that in itself is a form of prevention. Because if I know I'm pre-diabetic now, I'm going to take the precaution of reducing my sugars. So by next year, when I take the test again, I may be in a far better situation. As opposed to me not knowing by next year I'm diabetic, I'm putting more pressure on the health system, it's going to cost the health system more. So, I mean, that's what you call vision, that's what you call planning. You understand what I'm saying? As opposed to what is happening now. Now, Andre, I just want to go back to something. You kind of pretty much answer my question. You've said to me far more than my current government is telling me as far as those things are concerned. But Andre, I think I have the clip there right now. What do? Do I just play the audio? Or if I give it to you, if I give you my phone, you can play it?
You can send it to me on my phone.
Send it, but it's the same thing.
Oh, it's the same thing.
To you, but it's playing on my phone. I'm getting the audio on my phone.
Well, you can.
So I'll just play the audio.
Yeah, you can.
So for the benefit of our listeners, the question, since I cannot ask the Prime Minister the question that I asked the Leader of the Opposition, someone in the media asked him the question. So I am going to play the response that he gave. So hopefully I'll get the question and the response, and it can come out loud enough for you to hear. You know.
Particularly violent crime.
First of all, I want to remind you that the opposition were in government there.
Okay.
They were in government from 2016 to 2021, and they were there again from 2006 to 2011. So the opposition, they're not new kids on the block. They were in government. I also want to tell you that during that time, there was crime. There were shootings. There were drive-by shootings, which were not acceptable, which were condemned by the Labour Party. You will never find, me in particular, or you never find any, let me speak for myself, ever been on any platform heralding crime, or been on any platform accusing the opposition of directly causing crime. That's not my style. It has never been. It will not be. When I was in opposition, I called for zero tolerance towards crime. The records are clear. And this is why the opposition can never quote me. They can just quote what they say I said. But they never have me on record as saying what they say I said. So so my position on crime is clear. I have a zero tolerance towards crime. I've never condoned any criminal activity. I've never had any criminal friends. I have never done any criminal friends that I know. I have nothing to hide when it comes to crime. I've never behaved in any manner that would cause my office to be called into disrepute. I've never quarreled in bars. I've never insulted any owner of any hotel. I've never gone. So my position on these things are clear, and this is why the opposition has such a hard task, and this is why they have to go down to this name calling, because my position is clear. My record is clear. My position on crime has been clear. Zero tolerance. But I still believe that there must be a separation between the judiciary, between the legislature, and between the executive. There must be a separation.
That is your Prime Minister's response to what is his government's position on crime, Andre. I mean, can you believe that? Now, he's not just the Prime Minister. Now, if the Leader of the Opposition, who is here with me, I happen to know he's not the spokesperson for his party on national security. If he had said to me, you know what, go ask so-and-so, he is the spokesman, and so on, I would say, okay, probably he cannot articulate as well as the spokesman on that subject, so he sent me to somebody. At least I would find out what is his party's policy on crime. But he can send me to anybody. He is the Minister of National Security. And that is what the Prime Minister gave us as his response. So, listeners, viewers, St. Lucia, juxtapose that answer against what the Leader of the Opposition has said to Andre and I, and you decide for yourselves who is better placed, who you can rely on more who you feel more comfortable and satisfied will do a better job in managing the situation that exists today, the situation that has come about under the watch of the current Prime Minister. That is what I really wanted to do, and that is why I hope you heard the clip. I don't know what the quality was.
It was good.
It was good. So that is why I wanted to play, because for you, the caller, who always calls my programs and asks me my guests, what is the difference between the leader of the opposition and the current Prime Minister? You don't have cause to ask the leader of the opposition, because first of all, if you ask Philip J. Pierre what is the difference between him and Chasney, and you ask Honorable Chasney what is the difference between himself and Philip J. Pierre, I don't accept any of the answers, because naturally their answers will be biased. So we can make our own decision. So you need not ask the question. I allow you to make the judgment by giving you a response from both of them on one of the most important aspects of life in St. Lucia, our safety and security. So we're going to get back to our discussion now.
So no calls today?
Yeah. Oh, Andre, you know you have to remind me how to get carried away, you know. My guests will be so interesting. That's the thing. So we will open the line in a moment, but you were saying?
Another similar question. I don't know if you heard when they asked him the question about the population and the problem that we're having as it pertained to NIC, but just the dwindling population.
Yeah.
I don't know if you understood the answer. Did you understand the answer, Andre? Can you help me understand it?
Well, you've been facetious.
The way I understood
No, I'm not being facetious. I'm just asking you because I did not understand the answer. So let me put that clear. I'm asking you. You're a journalist. You've been here a longer time. You've known Philip Pierre.
I'm not a journalist. Correction.
Was that?
I'm not a journalist.
You are a journalist. Whether you like it
he's
or
a
not.
media person.
Right.
Okay. But you've been in this business, right? So you've heard a lot of answers. Help me. Help me to understand what is it that he said on a very important question.
But did you hear what he said, Andre?
I think I recall him talking about the situation. Yes.
Well, what did he say?
But I don't want to say what he didn't say, so I'd rather not go
No,
there.
it's not what he didn't say. What did he say?
But I mean, I don't want to quote him, and next thing I say something that he didn't say.
First of all, he laughed, Andre.
That's what he did. He laughed.
With a serious question, he laughed. I know if I asked him about health, like I did a while ago,
but in essence, I don't know whether there was a special cadence as to the laugh that now means something. Because all he did was laughed. So I don't understand what he said.
Well, in fairness to him, he also said that he's not in a position to do anything about the population growth. I don't know if he was saying that he's impotent or, I mean, don't blame me, I'm trying to interpret here now. If you want me to understand you, be clear. I don't know if you were saying that he's impotent or he is not making children anymore or whatever. And I do not think that the interviewer was asking him about his personal contribution to the population. As a leader, I think what they wanted to know is what is government's policy in light of the fact that this situation exists here now where our population is depleted.
So it's an important question. Yeah. And I bring it up because the answer to the question hopefully helps us understand as a nation the priorities that we need to have. Okay? So the solution to the problem, because of the low productive, the number of children that people are having in our country is dwindled. And once you get past a certain point, Andre, it's very difficult in a decade or 2 decades to reverse that, right? So the immediate answer to that question is the diaspora. How can we get solutions to come back home? And let's look at the opportunity that was created for us. Because all of a sudden you have this situation taking place in the States where people who have migrated to the States are feeling uncomfortable. All right? Whether the policies are right, they're feeling uncomfortable. So let's ask ourselves the question, because we know who these people are. They're our family. What would St. Lucia have to be in order to encourage these people to come back home? Voluntary. Healthcare, correct? Security, infrastructure,
employment.
And employment. Is that difficult, Andre? That's not rocket science. And so any government that recognizes that that's a problem and says, okay, I need to raise the level of my game in St. Lucia. And the first set of people that I want to attract is my diaspora. And so therefore I must fix the healthcare system. So 2021, we would have fixed the healthcare system. The roads would have continued being fixed. Cruise ship port in the south, call centers being developed, Headquarters Act being developed, creating jobs. Okay, we had a very clear plan that was showing promise with national security. Education system was changing. We're bringing in the e-books, modernizing our education system, right? All those are the things that people who would want to consider living in St. Lucia, that's the first list of things. That's what our plan was, Andre. It wasn't picked out of the sky. It wasn't only being motivated by what St. Lucians themselves want, which we know that that's what they want: affordable, quality health care. They want an education system that is globally competitive. They want safety, and they want economic opportunity. That's the four things. That was what we were working on. That's what was building a new St. Lucia was all about. Because the old St. Lucia couldn't do it. And when I kept on saying, well, the country's broke, what am I saying when I say the country's broke? It wasn't broke in the sense that we had to go and do a fire sale. It was broke in that the things that we deserve and that we desire, the standard of healthcare, the standard of education, the standard of national security, the standard of infrastructure. All these young people now have decided they don't like the bus system and they want to get their own car. What are we doing to make it more affordable for them, Andre?
Okay,
We're making it actually more expensive for them because look what happened in Dennery yesterday. I was driving out of Dennery. After people complain, they didn't complain over a weekend, right, Andre? They've been complaining for 2-3 years. Finally, the guy took a picture of four or five cars lined up that the same pothole ruptured the tire on all 5. So all 5 cars were lined up changing their tires. And finally, I hope that was the reason. But it could be that the government is having a meeting in Dennery, and all of a sudden, for their people, fixing up the road became the priority. But the answer to the question is that we must develop our country where we are globally competitive, so much so that our diaspora wants to come home, and that other persons internationally would want to come and live in St. Lucia.
Well, while the Prime Minister didn't answer the question, someone proposed that maybe his plan is to have the 40,000 or more CIP citizens to come and release. Well, Andre, can we open the line? Line now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we have 2 calls on hold, so let's go to the first one.
Okay, could you put on your headphones, sir?
Yeah.
Yes. Good morning, caller. Welcome to Meet the Opposition, or should I say Meet the Government in Waiting. We have here in studio our leader of the opposition. Do you have a question or suggestion or statement? Go ahead and make it, please.
Hello?
Hello, good morning.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we hear you clearly.
Yeah, I'll just make it brief and quick. Before I say anything, good morning to Mr. Montu, Mr. Chastity, and Andre Paul.
Morning.
Good morning.
I'll make it quick and brief that in connection, if you all were to win the next elections, what will you all be doing for the government pensioners? Because the reason why I ask that, it is very difficult for pensioners, especially the government pensioners, to get jobs out there. Now, I've retired since in 2002, right? And then I've only gotten, from 2002 to now, I've only gotten an increase of $54. That was way back in 2007, 2008. And we haven't gotten anything apart from the one-off payments. So I would like you to ask you again, what will you be doing for the government pensioners for us to live our lives on this unsustainable pension? That's my question.
100% correct. If you look at our manifesto in 2011, and one of our things for 5 for 5 directly speaks to that, right? We need to create a system where we will pay the healthcare insurance for our pensioners. We will include payments for utilities, both water and electricity, and phone connections, and that we would be giving them vouchers for food, right? In terms of the employment, the gentleman is right. Now, that's a minority group that are still in a position to work, right? So let's take my community, Micoud South, as an example. By creating jobs in the South, and that families now can remain in the South, those persons now are earning a proper income level, and when they come back to our community, they're spending money. The little grocery stores are going to benefit, and all of a sudden now, two people are working. They need somebody to clean their home, right? Some of the pensioners can do that. Some people need somebody to watch over their children while they're gone. Pensioners can be able to do that, right? The other one, which is very, very important to me, Andre, and it speaks to what our party wants to do, and my team can speak to this. I say it all the time, decentralizing of government.
Mm-hmm.
I heard my good friend Keith Mondesi call up again. I don't know what his obsession to wanting to call shows. I mean, this is a gentleman who is a failed politician, right? If he wants to talk about health, before he criticizes anybody or comments anything, let's go down to the Sioux Frere Hospital and see what he oversaw, the disaster that he oversaw there. Let's go to why I'm making the point, Black Bay, right? Black Bay could not be put in the worst place, Andrew. So you're telling me that that's where my parents are being sent. You ever try to take a bus to Black Bay?
No.
Just go through it in your mind. You have to go down to Vieux Fort, then you have to catch a bus from Vieux Fort to go to Black Bay. When you leave Black Bay, how are you going to get a bus? Because the buses between Vieux Fort and Choiseul are full. It can't be a more difficult place to get to. So that's why we believe decentralizing elderly care is important. And elderly care comes in two components. One are persons who are going to be permanently taken care of. And then there are daycare centers. Because I see too many elderly people whose minds are not being activated, Andre. They just sit there. They're just in the bed. They're not moving. The only conversation they have is if their little kids are there or their family's there. But there's nothing being done for them specifically. There's no programs being done for them specifically. And that's why bringing now elderly care into our communities on a constituency by constituency basis becomes so important. So it's not only the financial welfare of these individuals, because what he's saying is 100% right. It's too little. It's too little.
If I can come in here, I mean, what you said.
Don't forget you have your calls, huh?
Yeah, I'm in a position to comment on that because I mean, as social transformation minister in your cabinet, I know what the plans were. And you mentioned what will be done, but that is specifically for those who get in such a low income that they cannot meet their own needs and so on. But then, say for example, a person like myself, as a pensioner, I can buy my food, I can, and so on. But you're saying that there'll be programs for me to socialize.
And the ones that are below a certain level of pension, then there'll be supplements to their to their incomes.
And I think I can still do a little something. So I will be, because you improve the economy and so on, there will be jobs for people. Okay, I understand. So I just wanted to clarify that. Andre laughing at me like you don't think I can do anything still, you know. Anyway, let's go to the next caller.
He's just laughing because he's good, but that's what I have to look forward to.
You know?
I don't know what kind of a stimulation Andre is going to need, but anyway.
Yeah. Do we have a caller?
Yes, we do.
Yes. Caller, welcome to Meet the Opposition, or rather Meet the Government in Waiting. Go ahead and make your contribution, please.
Morning, Mr. Spider.
Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Former Prime Minister, Mr. Shastney, and morning, Andre.
Morning to
Good
you.
morning.
On 20th of August, it was a Tuesday of Parliament 2019, 20th of August, a Tuesday 2019. Janica Simon, at the time she was with Choice, asked the Prime Minister, what's up with the white paper and healthcare? Prime Minister said he just moved away from, well, not move away, he turned to the other media colleague and said, he said to the other, he just moved and said, next caller or next person. Why did you do that, Mr. Prime Minister? I'm just asking you that regarding healthcare and the white paper, and what was the white paper? The other question was, I heard you said, because of Richard Frederick, that Mr. Stephenson King was out as leader of the opposition. What year was Richard Frederick out of your party?
2013.
2013. Okay, 2013. All right. February 1st, 2014, Mr. Stevenson Rigabat, Miss Rigabat became leader of the opposition. Do you remember when she came to office the first day? Because Mr. Spider said he never remembered that. Do you remember when she came into as leader of the opposition? When she came to in her office on High Street, what happened? Did you remember that?
No.
Okay, you never remember. Let me remind you. When Miss Rigabat, Gail Rigabat, entered her office on High Street, the leader of the opposition's office was there. When she locked, no, I'm sorry, Stephenson King came to office in 2014. He was still the leader of the opposition. Gail Rigabat locked everywhere he could not enter. You don't remember that, sir?
I remember now, not vaguely. But what's the point you're trying to make?
I'm making the point because Mr. Spider said he never knew anything about, and he was in your government. On the 1st of February 2014, Gail Rigabat became the leader of the opposition.
I wasn't in government in 2014.
So you wasn't in the government at 20, but you never remember that.
I don't want to be. What's the point you're trying to make?
The point I'm making, and the other point I'm making is, Janika Simon asked you the question, you never answered.
So what's the connection between the Janika Simon situation?
No, that's
and
because he was saying about the Prime Minister that he never answered the question. I'm just telling about you. And you also did things to, Andrea was on Radio 100, you also did things to Mr. Lucien. Did you remember that? And Andre Paul was there when what you did to Mr. Lucien.
Caller, we don't have much time, but do you have a specific question for my guest? Could you ask a question?
I am asking him if he remembers.
Okay, he said he did not remember what he remembered. He told you to remember.
I am asking him what was the white paper and the health care that Janika Simon was asking him about, because now we're speaking about health care.
No, well, he didn't speak about white paper.
I want to say, ma'am, that the answer to the white paper was answered on multiple times. Okay? By that time, there were certain journalists, Rihanna Isidore, Miguel Favier, and Janika Simon, right, who were making it very clear that they were now going past the pale of journalism. And regardless of what we said, they just extracted whatever they wanted to be able to extract, all right? So when Janika asked me the question, I made it my point that if Janika wants to come and have an interview with me where the entire piece was going to be unedited, I'll be very happy to have a conversation. And in fact, I did that. I sat down in my office and had a very thorough discussion with Janika, and that is how that happened. It was not a refusal to answer anything on any white paper. I made my position clear on what healthcare was multiple times. We wanted healthcare insurance. We wanted to bring in the Cayman Health City people. We wanted to be able to move into OKEU. We wanted to transform the healthcare services.
Okay, but you've spoken on that already,
and I have,
even on this program this morning. So, Andre, do you have another call?
Unfortunately, we have to wrap up.
We have to wrap up. Well, since we have to wrap up, for being such a good guest, first of all, and let me just say that for my callers who have been blasting me, Andre said that is because of the leader of the opposition. I was early today, but I hope, you appreciate I made the effort. Mr. Leader of the Opposition, you came in quite early yourself, and you went through, you were very thorough in all of what you said and so on. But I still want to give you a moment to tell us why we should be on the boulevard on Sunday. Remind us again.
So very important that we have gone through a transformation again at the United Workers' Party.
Right.
We've created a new system of selecting our candidates.
All right.
And we've been busy building and reorganizing the United Workers' Party once again.
Very impressive job, I must say.
Right, and we want to say that it's not about just getting into government, but we're now organizing ourselves for after government.
Yeah.
That we've recognized more so than ever before that United Workers' Party is a vehicle. Right, and we have to all pay homage to that vehicle, a vehicle that was initially built by Sir John and his surrogates, and they did an amazing job.
So I used to ask that your team hit the ground running. Now that you say the party is a vehicle, I have to say that you all have to hit the road rolling.
Correct.
Okay.
They have to become the wheels to drive this drive this vehicle. Yeah. I'm very impressed, and I'm glad that many people in St. Lucia are also impressed with the caliber of candidates we've brought in. We speak about a Stephen Fairview coming from the WTO, and we were at the meeting with CSME,
Right.
and to hear the interaction and the levels of experience that were brought to that conversation, Andre, was goosebumps. Okay, you have Titus Prevel, who was heading up CSME. You have Tommy Descartes as a chief economist and also with CDB.
Yeah.
You have Marcella Johnson, a woman that has done remarkable things, knows what it is to be a woman in this world here, and to become a business person, right? And to become independent, and the experiences that she's bringing to the table.
And from banking as well.
And from banking, right?
Mm-hmm.
You then have Benson Emile. Benson Emile was the PS of health during COVID, Andre,
yeah.
right? Just think of it. Managing all of the hospitals, the healthcare centers, the hotels, right? All the medication that was coming in, getting the vaccines rolled out. Benson was the force behind that, and yet you never saw him. He allowed all the other persons to take the limelight. But I know, as the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister at the time, what an incredible job that Benson has done, and his passion for his community. Elisha Norbert. I mean, I laughed so much when I first met Elisha because he reminded me so much of myself. This is a kid, there's a guy that doesn't accept mediocrity and always believes there's a better way to do things and is willing to change and willing to challenge the system. So even when he said that, you know what, I'm not going to resign because I don't have to resign, because there are other court cases that have been established throughout the region, where as a civil servant, I cannot be denied that right. You have Lady Lee, right? Background like you, right? But as a young woman who has had her own fair share of challenges, and how she overcame those challenges, and how she can relate to the people in Vieux Fort South at this point, and what she's going to bring to the table. And the fact is that this party is standing up against Richard Fedrick, and many people in Vieux Fort South know what that means, because they've had Kenny Anthony for a long time protecting the constituency from Richard Fedrick. Well, I'm not so sure that the new guy can do that, but I know that Lady Lee can. You have Laura Davidson, who has been constant advocate for democracy and wanting for better representation for her own community. You have the proven of Herod Stanislaus. You have the success of Dominique Fede. You have the success of Guy Joseph. So you have Castries Central, this young boy, Rosh. I think that he's impressed all of us.
You know what, Mr.
His demeanor.
Leader of the opposition, I will not allow you to introduce the whole team there.
Yes.
Let Andre come to the boulevard. Okay.
And we have one more. We have one more candidate. We have one more candidate to be able to announce. But I want to say that as a collective, the very experiences that have been brought to the table, and now with the strengthening of the party itself and building on the success, you have Fortuna Belrose, you have Spider Montoute. You have so many of the ex-candidates that are remaining active in the party, and we're benefiting from their own experiences.
Francis
a whole bunch of them. Farah,
yeah.
Okay?
Right.
I can go down the list of so many of the candidates remaining involved that are strengthening the party. But here's the big thing. We need to show up in numbers to support the party, but also to send a strong message to this government that people are not happy with how things are going, particularly as it is to the cost of living, because we didn't really get to talk on cost of living. It is killing people in this country, unlike homicides. But we need to do something about the cost of living. The 2.5% tax must go, and the gas prices in this country must come down. A barrel of oil is at $65. It was just announced that there's an oversupply of oil, so we're expecting it to go down further. $16, Mr. Prime Minister, is unacceptable. People are crumbling. If you could find it in yourself to waive the 2.5% tax for a businessman coming in, because the businessman said he could not afford it, how is it that you have not translated that to the average household? So we on Sunday are going to bring these hot issues to bear, a plan on what we're going to be able to do, but more importantly, present the team that is going to rescue St. Lucia and to right the wrong.
So let me just say, Andrea, as we end, congratulations, first of all, to you, leader of the opposition, leader of the UWP, for a formidable team. He has not told you one of the secrets. If you come at the boulevard, you'll hear who's the candidate for View Fort North. And Andre, I want to thank you. I want to thank our listeners. I want to thank those who called in. And I must say, I think we had a very interesting and exciting program today. So I wish all of you a good weekend. And I look forward to seeing you at the boulevard on Sunday. And those of you who are in the diaspora, we will ensure that we'll be transmitting live so that you can follow as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard Spiderman, to the host of Meet the Opposition, and thank you to Leader of the Opposition, Alan Chastity, for your presence here today. So this has been Meet the Opposition, heard and seen on Rev-Up St. Lucia every Thursday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Well, this is the end of my stint here for today, Thursday, the 14th of August. Thanks for listening. Andre Paul wishing you a good day. Bye-bye.